All right, it's 9, so we can get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today for our first webinar in our series. I'm Ali Kovash. I'm a marketing specialist and I've been here at Steffes for 3 years.
And I'm Kaylee Lapp. I'm the marketing manager and I have been here for 6 years.
Yeah, so just, a couple of guidelines for today. You're on mute throughout the presentation. And then any questions you have as we go, there's a Q&A button, just enter them in there and Kaylee and I will keep an eye on that. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for questions and ask them to Al. So with that, we can hand it off to Al and he can get started with the presentation.
All right, thanks, Ali. As you all can see, we're working from home and my computer has already locked up. Oh, there we go. We're working from home, and I'm sure many of you are probably still doing the same, and so we're trying our best to get through these unprecedented times. As Ali said, I'm Al Takle. I've been with Steffes for 30 years now. I'm currently the product manager for ETS, and with my time at Steffes, I've done a number of different roles from product development to sales, and now in my current role of product manager. So we're going to talk about why Steffes Heating Systems today. I just want to kind of kick it off and kind of go through the products that we're showing on the screen right now, which is the breadth of our heating system storage heating system line. Start with the room heater. That's the unit that's the size of a suitcase. It's going to sit in the room that it's heating. Then we also have the whole house systems, which are our Comfort Plus systems. We have both forced air and hydronic, and they're both designed to be used with air source heat pumps, and we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we also have our Thermalect product, and I won't spend a lot of time on that today, but it is our commercial and industrial product line. They're up 80 kW, up to almost a half a megawatt hour of energy storage in each one of those units. And primarily we've used those in institutional applications. So schools and hospitals have kind of been the major places we've used those, but there's certainly other applications as well. So today we're going to talk about what are Steffes Heating Systems. We're going to go through utility benefits, and then we'll finish off with the consumer benefits. So what are Steffes Heating Systems? Well, it's electric thermal storage, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means exactly. But one of the things that our ETS products provide is the lowest cost electrical storage device. There's a lot of talk currently about batteries and different kind of chemical storage devices, and those are certainly have their place in the market today and into the future. But they are more money and for the kind of work that you can get done. So as we envision the future, we see the future to have products like the electric thermal storage units as well as batteries. And also the ETS provides flexible load, and we'll talk about how that integrates with renewables as we move into the future. All right, so let's talk about what is ETS. So it's the storage of renewable or off-peak electricity in the form of heat. So what we're going to do is we're going to use electric resistance, and we're going to heat up a mass of bricks. And while our bricks are very dense and provide weight, and that gives us some amount of storage, the real magic is that we get those bricks really hot. So in the coldest days, we're going to get those bricks up to 1,300 degrees, and we put that into an insulated thermos so that when we need the heat, we'll extract it out. When we don't need the heat in the space, we keep it in the stored space. And we'll extract the heat out of the units when there's a heat call, and the heat call can come from a number of different places. In a room heater, typically that's controlled by the Steffes heater itself. On our larger products, it's coming from either a thermostat, or in our commercial products, it might be coming from a backnet kind of building automation system. This particular drawing I showed here, or picture I have here, is our 4100 Comfort Plus system. So it's a forced air system. And you can see that there's a heat pump A coil on the return side. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, so one of the questions we get, so even though I've been doing this for 30 years, and many of you on the call, I'm sure, have been doing it for multiple decades as well, we still get asked all the time, is this new technology? What is ETS? You know, how does it work? And so it's important to have that breadth of knowledge when you're talking with customers. And so is it a new technology? No, it started in Europe and goes all the way back to World War II. And the reason they started it there was they had excess energy available at night, but they needed all the electricity that was available during the day to help rebuild after the war. And so they figured out that if we heat up bricks or rocks or something with electricity, they could store that heat during the day. And that, of course, has been refined over the years. The technology came to North America in the early 70s. And primarily, what was going on then is there was a lot of power plants that were built in the US and Canada, and they were had excess capacity at night. And so the utilities were looking about how can we effectively provide low-cost energy to our customers. And they said, hey, ETS is a good option. So it came here in the 1970s. And Steffes got involved in the mid 80s. I guess I can move on to the next slide. And the reason that Steffes got involved is because the utilities came to us and said, hey, we're using these heaters, but they don't quite serve the purpose of our customers here. They don't have as much insulation. They don't have enough blower systems in it. They're only room heaters. They don't do whole house systems. Hey, Steffes, can you help us and provide products for us? And so in 1987, we started to do that. And today we heat over 100,000 homes across North America, all the way from Nova Scotia, across Canada up to Alaska, all the way down to, down in South, places like Kentucky and Arizona, places that maybe you don't think of as being heating. Our heaters do provide good value in those places as well. And I should just say that Steffes is a stable and diverse company. Where ETS is one of our divisions. We also have divisions where we make products for other companies, and we're also OEM in the oil field as well. So when we look at our products, we of course are in residential product or residential market, as well as that commercial and industrial market. The building on the right is a office building in Quebec, Canada, and we have our Thermelect heating that building as well. And over the years, we've developed a 10 gigawatt hour thermal battery for energy storage in North America. So that's what the heaters are, ETS is. So why is it beneficial to utilities? And we look at that, we're going to provide grid reliability and stabilization and optimization and improve efficiency. And we'll talk a little bit about how that worked in the past. But we're really trying to help utilities make their systems as efficient as possible. Today and into the future, we're really looking at how our systems can help integrate large quantities of renewables and be smart grid compatible. And how we're being smart grid compatible is using Internet of Things technologies to be able to talk to our heaters, to be able to provide communications to both end users and to utilities, so that it can provide the maximum comfort, as well as the ability for utilities to make smart decisions on when to charge and how to best utilize the storage that is there. So when we look at traditionally, ETS has been considered strategic energy sales, and how that has worked is to utilize the off-peak hours. And what is off-peak? Well, it's those hours when demand for electricity is lower, and hours when the power company can provide electricity at a more economical or at a reduced price. And so if we look at a typical load curve for a utility, this graph has on the x-axis has our time of day, so starting at midnight and going through noon and all the way on to midnight. And on the y-axis is what the total load is. And so you can see in the middle of the night, there's not much demand for electricity, but utilities have already purchased all that infrastructure, right? They have the power plants, they have the power lines. So they already have all that stuff so that they can meet the peak times. And typically, especially in a residential kind of market, you see this kind of double humped peak load curve where they peak in the morning when people get up and turn on their electric loads. And then they will peak in the evening when people come home from work. And there's usually a kind of a valley in the middle of the day. So being able to use energy or sell energy from a utility perspective during these off-peak times, they're able to do that because the infrastructure is already there. So anything that they make, the costs are much lower than they would be during the peak times. And so trying to get this curve as flat as possible will help provide efficiencies into the overall system. The other thing that I mentioned before is that our systems can be combined with air source heat pumps, and dealing with state mandates that say you have to have efficiency programs, and even specifically call out heat pumps in a lot of cases. But the challenge you have is that an air source heat pump works really well down to a certain temperature, and after that you have to have something else to back it up. It also doesn't have the ability to be turned off, you know, if there's a peak incident that you want to try to avoid. So typically when people are installing air source heat pumps, they're putting in you know, just on the general service rate, which can be an expensive way to heat at times, even though it's very efficient. But combining that air source heat pump along with the Steffes system, that will give you the most economical heating and cooling system available. And we've been doing that with our Comfort Plus series heaters and their predecessors all the way back to 1989. Today, we're looking at how we can combine with mini split heat pumps with our room heaters. We think that'll be something that you'll see us coming out with over the next couple of years, and being able to seamlessly integrate, like I said, our room heaters along with mini split style heat pumps. I just want to talk about how our system works to provide maximum comfort and maximum efficiency. When you look at our system, the indoor part of the heat pump is this A coil, and the A coil sits in the return side of the Steffes system. And so what happens is when there's a heat call, the heat pump starts up, we start to bring air through the ductwork, and we will let the heat pump do as much work as it can. And so we allow that heat pump to efficiently add heat into the ductwork. As it gets colder outside, that heat pump possibly doesn't have enough ability to do the total heating load of the home, or doesn't do it comfortably. And what I mean by that is very common, you get down to 20 degrees or 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and people will turn off the heat pumps, because even though technically they could heat the room to 70 degrees, they do it by blowing 80-degree air around in the house, and it becomes drafty and uncomfortable. So what our system does is we allow that heat pump to do the work. We monitor the discharge air, and if it's not warm enough, we have some variable speed fans which will extract heat out of the bricks. It's very seamless, automatic. Homeowners don't ever really know what's going on, which is what they want, but it's providing nice, comfortable air to them all the time. All right, so looking at how things have changed over the last 5 years, and we think are really going to continue to change over the next 5, 10, and more years, is renewables being a significant part of the energy generation landscape. And our feeling is that wide use of renewables requires storage. Renewables are variable, whether that be wind or solar, and so you need some storage. ETS is that low cost, long life, use it every day kind of storage that can help integrate those large quantities of renewables. And we're starting to see state mandates of, they were at 25%. Now they're at, most areas have already hit those targets, and they're talking 50 and even 100% in some locales. And that's going to cause a lot of need for, flexibility within loads. And so ETS certainly provides that. And in real time, and also being able to, when there's excess energy on the grid, to be able to go grab that and store it for use later when it makes sense. The other thing that I don't know that we talk enough about, but we should, is the use of renewables with ETS significantly reduces carbon footprint of home heating. It's interesting today in the MISO footprint, which is the Midwest Interconnection, which I would have remembered what MISO stands for, but it's the wholesale market for energy from North Dakota and Minnesota all the way down to Louisiana in the center part of the US. Today, if you put ETS system in and allow it to charge from 11 at night to 7 in the morning, which is very typical for a lot of our customers, so the carbon footprint in that home is actually less than it would be to use natural gas in the home. And like I said, I don't think we talk about that enough, and we really should be talking about how ETS does provide that low carbon footprint for heating. And as we get more renewables, you're going to see that that carbon footprint go down less and less with electric heating. So Steffes Heating Systems provide the double green benefits, both economic and environmental, to help the utility provide benefits for their customer base. Okay, with that, Kaylee, maybe just stop for a second and see if there's any questions that people have or comments.
Don't see any questions yet. Just as a reminder, there's a Q&A button on the bottom of your webinar. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to shoot us one, and we will get those answered at the end of the session.
All right, so let's move on to consumer benefits, and I just want to touch on these. So when I go and do contractor trainings, or we bring in contractors to out to the factory, we ask, what is it about Steffes that makes consumers want to buy it? And this is a list that would be very typical. Sometimes we get some other answers, but things that they say consumers are looking for is efficiency, low energy bills, comfort, easy to use, low or no maintenance. Especially huge in places like that have a lot of fuel oil heating. Reliable, safe, flexible. upfront costs when there's rebates available. That certainly is something that people look at. Warmth. I think in that case, we're typically talking about our room heaters. People like to go and sit on them and hug them and get that warm to the bone kind of feeling. No carbon emissions and green options. So those are the kind of the list of things that homeowners are looking for and appreciate about our ETS heaters. So some of the things that we like to talk about is the lowest heating costs. You know, 40 to 75% less than other options, and we'll go look at a graph that we can produce for you if you want. Electricity prices are stable and predictable. I think that is also something that people like to know, you know, not to be surprised. I know if we go back about 5 years ago in Minnesota, propane was $5 for the month of January, and that caught a lot of people by surprise. And we might be headed there again this year. We'll talk about that a little bit too. It's all electric, so you don't need to have multiple heating systems like you do with some dual fuel options that are out there. And of course, no fossil fuels are needed. Being able to provide that comfort. And I like to talk about our satisfied customers. When we go and we poll the end users, and I'd encourage you, if you're a utility, to do this as well, is you know, find out how satisfied your customers are with your ETS programs. We find that 95% are not only happy, but they're happy enough that they go tell their friends and neighbors. Real common for us to see applications where one neighbor gets an ETS system and all of a sudden we see the whole subdivision have ETS in it. So that's a fun thing to sell and something that we really hold our hat on. So I talked about operating costs, and I'm happy to you know, help get you one of these kind of graphs for your particular area, working with your particular rates. And here you can see the numbers I used. So I get questioned all the time. Well, propane, $2.05. Well, here it's $2.50, or here it's 99 cents. Well, that's true. So you know, it varies all over the place. I have an off-peak rate of 5.3 cents. Again, that's what kind of system you have, or you know, what your particular rates are. And again, I'm happy to either provide you this spreadsheet or build it for you. Very simple. But very common off-peak rates are about half of what standard electric rates are. And if you combine that with a heat pump, you can get even more efficiencies out of it, even to the point of being less than a geothermal heat pump. I get asked about that a lot, where people will say, well, a geothermal heat pump is 300% efficient. How can an air source heat pump, which when it gets cold outside is only, pick a number, 150% efficient, how can it have better cost option than the heat pump? Of course, that's because we're using the off-peak rates. And so since we were able to put the system on the off-peak rate, we're able to provide lower cost energy. And just to finish up, just want to put a plug in for our commercial and industrial products. We sell them. About half of what we sell is in Quebec of these, and then the other half is kind of spread throughout the rest of our markets. And we've done a number of different applications, from actual heating co-op buildings to border crossing stations to, like I mentioned, schools and hospitals. There are, you know, schools in Minnesota that have 14 of these things in there. So they're a really good option to provide low cost heating for something that maybe you don't think about as traditional ETS market. So why Steffes Heating Systems? It's good good for the consumer and dealer, low heating costs, great comfort, reliable. Good for the power company because it improves your load profile, sales of off-peak energy. It's good for the environment, provides energy efficiency and storage of renewables, and it's beneficial electrification. Which is a term we continue to hear more and more. There's the Beneficial Electrification League that is primarily being sponsored by the rural co-ops, but certainly we see municipals and IOUs buying into this electrification, and we think you're going to hear more and more of that as we see municipalities start to ban fossil fuels for heating in new construction. We think that's going to continue to be more and more both across all of North America. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kaylee if there's any questions.
So we got one question from Ryan, and his question is, the concept of a room unit heat pump is interesting and could be a big hit at the right price point. I also had a member ask about a box of batteries to replace their box of bricks. Is Steffes considering any standalone options that could continue to operate in a power outage scenario?
So I think, well, maybe I'll just touch on the room heater part. We are in the process of a redesign of our room heaters, just starting to kick off that project. And that has been something we've been asked about for a long time. And so we will be looking at how we could run our fans during an outage. When I think of it, I think of it as being a relatively short-term kind of situation where we would not have enough battery for the actual heating of the bricks or bringing on the resistant heating elements, but have enough that it could run the blower and extract heat out to provide, comfort for relatively short duration outages. For day-long outages, then we'll have to think of something else. And what was the other question? Combining them with heat pumps. Yeah, certainly the cost is something that we're looking at. Typically what people have been doing to back up that resistance or to back up the mini split heat pumps is to put just baseboard in the home. And because it's just a low cost option and they can, throw it in relatively easily, but not having that integration between the two heating systems and how they run, especially as it gets colder out, we feel there's a spot where we can find a nice niche and do it economically.
The other part of that question, Al, was I also have a member ask about a box of batteries to replace their box of bricks. Is Steffes considering any standalone options that continue to operate in a power outage scenario?
So I think I answered that, but we do have, I should mention that batteries is something that we look at all the time. There are only a few people that actually make batteries across the world. Panasonic and Samsung are the big battery producers, but there are a number of people that package them together, and certainly that fits within our core competencies of being able to do manufacturing of components, and we could certainly do that. Today we don't have any current projects going, but it is something that we get asked about on a regular basis. I guess that's all I have there.
Okay. There was another question from Tammy. How does the thermalec hydronic for CNI differ from the other ETS furnaces? Maybe explain more detail about the thermalec hydronic, just not familiar with it. And do you have any marketing materials available for it? And I would say yes to the marketing materials. It's updated on our website with a brochure. If you want to shoot Allie or myself an email, we can get you that stuff. And maybe Al, you can address the question about the commercial application versus the residential.
Sure. So the big difference is that it's designed for the higher voltages. So in the US, that's 277/480 volts. In Canada, that's 347/600. So that's the big thing. The other part of it is they're just bigger. So where a 4140 has 240 kWh of storage, a 9180 Thermalect has 440 kWh of storage. So they work with the higher voltages, which would be more three-phase, that would be more applicable in the industrial and commercial space, and also are just larger.
We got one more question. It's from JP. Are you looking into energy management of hot water tank, EV, ETS, and home battery?
So absolutely. So that is something that we have put a lot of thought into. We are Hydro Plus water heaters that currently aren't available, but we did do a lot of work with those over the years, and we have active projects on water heater controls that will provide that flexible resource that utilities need. In terms of the other product lines, that is also something that we have within our umbrella of Internet of Things technology hat, and it is one of our priorities that we are pushing forward and trying to bring all of that stuff within a single premise together to provide that to the utilities, so that so the utilities can use it in a way that's effective for them, and without providing the homeowner to be either uncomfortable or not being able to operate whatever the appliances is that they want to operate.
Does not look like there's any questions left. Advance to the next slide.
All right, thanks, Al. And then thank you everybody for joining us today for our first webinar in the series. We'll have some more coming up throughout the summer, diving into some more specific topics related to ETS. So keep your eye out for those. We'll be sending the signups in our monthly newsletters. So if you or anybody you know wants to be added to that list, just let me know and we can get you on there. We'll also be sending a follow-up email after this with just a quick survey to ask, how was it? Looking for any feedback that you have to help us improve these and make them more valuable to you in the future. Yeah, anything else, guys?
No, thank you for tuning in to us while we social distance from each other.
Thank you again, and again, any feedback you can give, we'd appreciate. And if there's any topics or specific questions you want us to answer in one of these webinars, please give those to us as well.